Hi, I'm Ryan Mahoney, the Director of Engineering for the Customer Technology Department of the Massachusetts Bay Transit Authority, the MBTA, or simply the T, a government agency responsible for operating most public transportation services in Greater Boston. Our department manages over 30 production applications that our riders and staff depend on. From our website to digital signage that shows when a vehicle will arrive to internal tools we use to improve the quality of service. We didn't always have great insights into incidents that occurred within our applications. At first, a lot of alert notifications went through email to specific individuals, and there wasn't a comprehensive view of what sort of incidents were happening, how long it took to acknowledge and resolve, if all the relevant parties were notified, whether we were consistent with our messaging to executives, whether we were diligent about resolving root causes, and if anyone other than a handful of subject matter experts could even evaluate an issue, let alone make a fix. We've come a long way since then. We now have a modern incident management process where, thanks to PagerDuty and a few related tools, all of our applications are monitored, issues are routed to the person on call, our on-call rotation has 10 members, and we can differentiate automatically between high-severity urgent issues and issues that can wait. I'm going to talk today about incident management from the perspective of working in government. This talk is aimed at people who also work in the public sector who may be at the early stages of modernizing their infrastructure and might be considering if PagerDuty makes sense for their agency. When it comes to the context of incident management in government, you may ask, does it really make a difference? Monitoring and addressing software-related incidents is the same whether you're working in government or for a for-profit company, isn't it? Well, the processes may be the same, or at least they should be, but the context is quite different. It's hard to imagine a for-profit company with millions of customers not having a good incident management process and a large, well-trained team to handle incidents. In government, we also frequently serve millions of individual members of the public, our customers, but the tools, processes, and approaches used tend to lag far behind the private sector. I've written and spoken extensively about this topic before, but for today's talk, let's acknowledge that government technology teams tend to be frequently underfunded, undertrained, and generally overtaxed by the burden of managing a patchwork of legacy systems held together with Band-Aid fixes. To make matters worse, in government, we often find ourselves in long-term contracts with vendors that provide unreliable access to accurate real-time data that our in-house systems depend on. In the private sector, low-quality vendors get eliminated, but in government, it's just another technology hurdle that we have to handle. There's so many areas in government that would benefit from modernization, but in many cases, significant obstacles are perpetuating the status quo. In my opinion, incident management is the low-hanging fruit of government technology modernization. In this talk, we'll look at how and why government agencies can achieve a modern incident management process, what obstacles they may face, and how to overcome those obstacles. So, why start with incident management? I think the first thing is cost. The licensing costs for Splunk, PagerDuty, Slack, and Asana, my preferred incident management stack, are generally affordable and can be configured and managed by existing teams. It's easy to understand the benefits, and this is, I think, a little confusing, but despite leading organizations managing and frequently providing technology services, government agencies don't think of themselves as technology companies, and government leaders are surprisingly non-technical. The value proposition for modernizing incident management is easy to convey. We can provide better service, awareness, and communication by embracing modern DevOps approaches to incident management. In turn, this results in a better customer experience, lower costs, and more leverage with problematic vendors. It promotes sustainability. A modern incident management approach generally improves documentation, information flow, and reduces reliance on subject matter experts, making an organization more sustainable in the face of staff turnover and even growth. It promotes collaboration. Legacy teams that focus on supporting and maintaining older systems and application development teams that focus on building new services can work together on the incident management process. This is an important collaboration in the public sector, as these teams can typically exist very separately in their own silos. Let's take a look at the tools of incident management. Being that technology modernization can be so challenging for a government organization and their staff, it's essential that the software tools are easy to use. In our approach, we use GitHub as a document repository where we maintain living runbooks which describe what to do when a particular incident occurs. We have a log aggregation system, Splunk, where all logs from all systems go, and we use simple queries to drive incident alerts, and we connect all alert descriptions to the appropriate runbook. Incident management, that's where PagerDuty comes in. It's really the glue for this process, but it also acts as a source of truth for all incidents and certain metrics about how long they took to resolve how long it took to acknowledge them, how many high severity incidents occurred, and so on. Incident collaboration, that's where we use Slack. This is where we facilitate effective communication about incidents and promote high performance, blameless culture. And then accountability. And PagerDuty comes in here again, but also with Asana. This is where we create postmortems, identify after actions, track and assign them, and really try to prevent incidents that occurred once from ever happening again. So let's look at this in a little bit more detail. Incident planning. One of the biggest obstacles to any on-call rotation for incident management is that nobody wants to be on call. At first, you might think, sure, who wants to get paged while they're making dinner with their family or watching a movie? And that is a factor. But the biggest hurdle is that people think that if they're on call, they will be personally on the hook to resolve any issue that occurs. In an organization like ours with 30 production apps, no single person has familiarity with all these systems. And the idea of having to fix a system in the middle of the night or at an awkward time generates a lot of anxiety. Thankfully, this idea is wrong. The on-call person needs to acknowledge issues that come in and follow clearly outlined steps contained in a runbook for each type of issue. Being on call means that you're part of the tier 1 support. In most cases, if the issue is not a blip, the issue will be escalated to an appropriate subject matter expert for resolution. Here's an example of a runbook. And basically, a runbook is going to document the entire process. So anybody on the team can confirm an issue, notify stakeholders, gather information to help identify the cause, and engage a subject matter expert if necessary. Monitoring. The next most important part of the process is monitoring, because it's hard to tell what's wrong if you don't know what wrong looks like relative to a healthy system. In other words, effective management of incidents depends on good monitoring of applications. At CTD, we use Splunk Cloud for log aggregation and alerting. We forward all of our application logs into Splunk, everything from health checks to errors to operational data such as bus location updates, totaling about 30 gigabytes per day. This becomes a pool of data we can draw from to build dashboards and automated alerts. For alerting, Splunk allows us to define queries that check these logs for problems. Splunk then runs the queries automatically at regular intervals. If a problem is detected, Splunk sends an alert via email. We often send non-urgent alerts to a relevant channel in our Slack workspace using their email integration. This can be good for visibility and discussion, but it can also be noisy for repeated alerts. And this speaks to an important problem, which is just having the alerts isn't necessarily enough to be effective. Anyone who's ever had an inbox of alerts will probably agree. Having too many alerts that aren't useful can lead to alert fatigue, where repeated alerts get ignored. So the next challenge lies making sure these alerts are deduplicated and they're actionable. You shouldn't be bombarded with multiple alerts about the same issue. And there needs to be a clear action you can take to resolve the condition that caused the alert in the first place so it doesn't keep spamming you. That's why, for more urgent problems, we forward Splunk alerts to PagerDuty, and this is where our formal incident management process begins. The main thing PagerDuty helps us do is deduplicate the alerts that come from Splunk into incidents that require immediate action. CTD has a rotation of people from across the department who share the responsibility of being on call in 1-week shifts. As you can see, we have a PagerDuty app connected to Slack, which reminds us when the shift changes over. The on-call person is the first point of contact when an incident is triggered in PagerDuty, and they become the first responder. They're required to acknowledge the incident and coordinate the process of resolving it. It's important to note that this process doesn't instruct the on-call person to personally diagnose and fix every issue. Instead, their primary responsibility is to collect information and communicate with stakeholders. I want to highlight the importance of this distinction because it means the first responder doesn't have to be a technical stakeholder in order to be effective at incident response. They don't have to know how to fix every possible thing that could break. They just have to know how to engage. As mentioned, the runbooks exist to facilitate that knowledge. We use a dedicated Slack channel for incident management, which is meant to serve as a single point of truth for all incident communication. This channel receives updates when a PagerDuty incident is triggered, updated, or acknowledged, whenever the responder sends an email to update stakeholders, and with any and all new information about the cause of the incident or the process of resolving it. The incident response Slack channel is public to the agency, meaning anyone can join the channel to see the status of an ongoing incident or help drive towards a resolution. In this example, one of our public information officers have reported an issue accessing the PA system that drives announcements in subway stations. and we were able to work directly with them in Slack to implement a workaround while we resolved the issue. Once the incident is resolved, the responder is tasked with writing a postmortem report in PagerDuty. A postmortem report is a survey that covers what caused the incident, what systems were impacted, how we resolved it, issues that made it harder to resolve, like login issues or communication problems, recommendations for how to prevent or minimize the impact of future incidents, including improvements to the incident management process itself. PagerDuty's postmortem tool includes a Slack integration to help build a timeline of events. And because we use Slack as a source of truth for incident communication, we can easily pull messages from the channel history to help document and analyze the incident. PagerDuty's Slack integration has made postmortem data collection that would sometimes take hours take minutes, because we can easily slide messages from Slack into the postmortem timeline. One key aspect of the postmortem process is that it should be blameless. This is because we want to foster an environment where people can discuss what went wrong without fear of retribution, regardless of who could be at fault. We build and manage products as a group, so we should be able to troubleshoot them as a group as well. So rather than focusing on the failures of individuals, we want to focus on how the organization can improve. Once the postmortem report has been reviewed by the team, it's added to a folder that's shared widely across the authority. Any recommendations are tasked in Asana, our task management system, and assigned to the appropriate teams for triage. This is the incident management lifecycle, which allows us to be transparent to our stakeholders about when and how problems occur, to hold ourselves accountable to fixing those problems so they don't happen again, and to improve the overall resilience of our systems as a whole. Now, there are many obstacles to modernizing incident management in government, but a lot of them have to do with culture. When we talk about culture, we don't only mean what is commonly understood to be good culture versus bad culture in a vague way. To achieve a consistent and thorough approach to incident management, you need a generative or performance-oriented culture. Ron Westrom, a sociologist who studies the impact on culture and safety, developed a framework to describe organizational cultures that help or hinder safety, and also have turned out to be predictive of DevOps performance and stability. If you look at this chart, he has these three sections: pathological, which are power-oriented; bureaucratic, rule-oriented; generative, which are performance-oriented. As much as possible, we want our organization to be high cooperation. We want people to be trained about bad news. We want risks to be shared by everybody. We want people to be able to work together. We want failures to lead to inquiry. And we want new ideas, when they're good ideas, to be implemented. We do see a lot of pathological and bureaucratic types of culture in government, and that could be a significant obstacle to implementing a process if people aren't willing or they don't feel safe being a part of the process. Here are a few examples of generative culture. Western noted that culture influences the way that information is shared. In generative culture, people are able to ask questions and receive an answer. The answer is provided in a timely manner, and it's presented in a way that's useful for the person who asked. In this case, we have someone who asked or who's asking about a vendor and mentioning that their emergency number has been updated. Within a few minutes, they get a correct answer, they updated the documentation, and every subsequent person who has to deal with this type of issue will have the correct information. In generative culture, messengers get trained, not shot. We want people to bring us bad news so we can make things better. For example, I mentioned earlier holding blameless postmortems. By removing blame, you remove fear. And by removing fear, you enable teams to surface problems and solve them more effectively. In this picture, we have a member of our DevOps team announcing that executive escalation is now more automated and easier to use than ever. In a case where people are afraid, they wouldn't want executives to be notified so efficiently. But in our team, people were excited that this is going to take less manual effort and that's going to happen in a more smooth way. In generative culture, failure leads to inquiry, not scapegoating. In this picture, we had someone on a weekend who observed a problem, and they received 39 replies from different people. There were 6 people participating. They actually diagnosed the issue in 23 minutes, and in 59 minutes, they had actually deployed a fix to a production environment. So After years of refining our incident management process and working hard to maintain a high performance culture, it finally happened. A staff member reached out to me on Slack and said, "Hey, can you add me to the on-call rotation?" You might be thinking, so what? This is actually a huge accomplishment. Prior to this, all on-call members were strongly encouraged to join. But by making the process less daunting and more transparent, we also made it more welcoming. Today, our on-call rotation and incident management process is working well because it's valued by our organization and our staff. Thanks for attending this session, and I hope you're able to implement a modern incident management process in your government agency.